All right, this is going to be lesson 5.2, algebraic expressions, and we've already done a lot of this before. This is sort of a building lesson towards the next one. So we're going to talk about adding and subtracting like terms. And what's different now is our terms can be a little more complicated than we were before, but basically a like term has the same variables and the same exponents on each variable. So for instance, these two terms, 3x cubed y squared and 8x cubed y squared, are like terms because they both have x raised to 3 and y raised to 2. So we can add these because they're like each other. If we added them, it would be 11. We have 11 of this thing, x cubed y squareds, or we could subtract them too. Same variables, same exponents. Here's some examples of not like terms. These three terms are not like each other, even these first two. So there's an x cubed and an x cubed, but this would need a y cubed to be a like term with this term. So we wouldn't be able to combine these with adding it or subtracting. We've also used this before, but we're finally defining it. There's distributive property. So we have something a times parentheses b plus c, or a times parentheses b minus c, and a, b, and c could be numbers, they could be variables, they could be terms with numbers and variables. This is just a general pattern, but what we're talking about distributing is you're going to multiply this thing, this term out here, by each term. So it would be whatever a is times b, and whatever a is times whatever c is. And plus is going to be plus. Or if it's minus, a times b gives a times b, and a times negative c gives negative ac. So let's do a simple example. 6 times 2x minus 3 in parentheses. So we just multiply the 6 by the 2x, and multiply the 6 by the negative 3. 6 times 2x is 12x, and 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. Next thing is, this maybe doesn't look like the same thing, but it is. We have a trinomial and subtract another trinomial. Tri just means 3 terms. And what we're going to do, actually, this minus right here with the parentheses means we need to subtract this thing in its entirety. And if you don't know, there's kind of a 1 here, like negative 1. We're just going to distribute this negative 1 to each of these. The net effect is the signs on the things, the signs on these three terms are going to swap. So we're distributing this negative in. So this is a positive 3x, so we're minusing 3x squared. Subtract 3x squared. Minus 2x, so it becomes minus, and minus negative 4 becomes positive 4. So first thing is distribute, and now that we've gotten rid of the parentheses essentially, by the way, these parentheses on the front, there's a positive one here, and we distributed that. So the parentheses just go away. Like terms, so there's a 5x squared and a minus 3x squared are like terms. They have x's and they have squareds. And this negative 3x and this negative 2x are like terms, and these just numbers 8 and 4 are like terms. Yeah, so those are like terms, those are like terms, and those are like terms. And then you're going to group them. You don't have to do this next part, but I'm just going to do it this one time to show. We're just going to rearrange the order of these things so the like terms are next to each other. And now we can combine these two terms, combine these two terms, combine these two terms. 2x squared, negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5, and a plus 4 is 12. I don't usually do this grouping, like rewriting the things in a different order, because you can just start from 5x squared and minus 3x squared to get the 2x squared, and negative 3x minus 2x to get the negative 5x, and positive 8 plus positive 4 to get the 12. It's up to you. All right, give these ones a try, and then I will walk through the solutions and the answers. Okay, this first one, there's a positive 1 here, a positive 1 here, so the parentheses essentially just go away. We distribute that positive 1, and then we group our like terms. 4x to the 5 plus 6x to the 5, 2x cubed plus 2x cubed, and then there's no other x to the 4th terms, and there's no x squared terms, and there's no other x. So we still keep them though. So 4 plus 6 is 10 of these things, and then there's just the negative 3 of these x to the 4th, and then there's 2 of these x cubes and 2 more, plus 2 plus 2 is 4, and then minus 7x. It's customary but not required to write things with the highest exponent down to the lowest exponent. Okay, next one. There's a positive 1 which will distribute, and these parentheses just go away, and there's a negative 1 which will distribute, and the signs on each of these will change. So this will be negative x cubed, negative 2x, and positive 5. Or subtract x cubed, subtract 2x, and add 5. Combine our like terms, and you should get that answer. And this one is a little different. Now we're kind of going back to the previous thing. So you distribute the 2 times x squared, 2 times 3. And on this side, negative 4 times 2x squared, and negative 4 times negative 1. So 2 times x squared is 2x squared, 2 times 3 is 6. Negative 4 times 2x squared is negative 8x squared, and negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. And then you combine like terms. 2 of these minus 8 of these is negative 6, and positive 6 plus 4 is 10. At this point, I want to recommend that you don't try to do too much in your head. Just write down in intermediary steps like I'm doing here. And the last one. So this is already no parentheses, so we just find the like terms and combine them. So 4 of these plus 1 more of these. So there's a 1 there. We just don't write it. Gives us 5. And then 2 of these plus 5 of these gives us 7 of x cubes. And then there's no other like terms, but we keep them around. If there's no other like terms, you don't just throw it away. It's still there. We just can't do anything more with it. So it's still there in the answer. All right. Our next thing is starting to get a little more complicated. This is what you may have learned in the past as FOIL. You have 2 binomial terms, two terms with 2 things in them. And FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last. I don't particularly like FOIL. But basically what happens when you have something in parentheses times something else in parentheses, you just have to make each multiplication, every combination of multiplications. So we're going to multiply 2x by each of these terms in the other one. And then we're going to multiply negative 4 by each of the terms in the other one. So negative 4 times 3 is negative 12x, and negative 4 times positive 5 is negative 20. And then we combine these 2 like terms to finish it off, and we're done. All right, give these practice exercises a try, and then I'll explain the solutions. All right, number 1. So we got one term over here that we're going to distribute. 2x times 7x squared, 2x times 4. 2x times 7x squared is 14x cubed. So x times x squared, now there's 3 of them. You can remember this from your exponent lesson if you want. This is the power 1, and we add the exponents, or x times x times x. And anyways, 2x times 4 is 8x. This one, we are going to multiply every combination of terms. 7x times 9x is 63x squared. 7x times 3 is 21x. And now we're done with that one. Now we multiply the 2 by each of these. 2 times 9x is 18x, and 2 times 3 is 6. Then we combine these two middle terms, the like terms, and we're done. Now next one is the one where you might start having trouble. With negative numbers, sometimes we run into trouble. Let's walk through it. So 6x squared times 2x. 6 times 2 is 12. And x squared times x is x cubed. We get that one. Negative 5x times positive 2x is negative 10x squared. Oh, I went in the wrong order. Let's go back up just a little bit. Go in the right order. Well, there's no right order. They're both right, but be consistent. So 6x squared times negative 5. 6 times negative 5 is negative 30 x squareds. Now we can do this term. Negative 5x times positive 2x is negative 10x squared. And negative 5x times negative 5. Negative times negative is positive. And I think you're maybe starting to see a pattern when you have these binomials. There's always a middle term that gets combined afterwards. And last one, and this is one sort of above and beyond what I would maybe test on, is a binomial times a trinomial. There's just a lot of work, but what we're going to do is multiply the 2x by each of these 3 things and multiply the negative 1 by each of these 3 things. It's not that hard, it's just starting to get a lot of work. So 2x times this 6x squared gives us that one. 2x times negative x gives us negative 16x squared. 2x times 9 gives us positive 18x. And then we multiply the negative 1 by each of the 3. Negative 1 multiply 6x squared. Negative 1 multiplied by negative 8x, and that will give us positive x. And negative 1 times positive 9 gives us negative 9. And then there's actually some like terms here. There's these 2 things with x squared and these 2 things with just x to the 1. Combine them and get that. So I may or may not test one like this. This one would definitely be out though. 2 trinomials. We're going to multiply each of these 3 terms by each of these 3 terms. So there's going to be 9 terms in the initial step here. Let's just slow down. So starting with the 2x squared multiplied by each of these 3 things gives us these 3 terms. And then this 2x multiplied by each of these 3 things. And here we're just lining it up vertically to kind of simplify the grouping phase and lining it up by exponent. And then we'll do the negative 5 by each of these things. And now we do our grouping. So there's just one of these term, 2 of these, and actually 3 of these, 2 of these. So just add them kind of top to bottom. So there's really no limit with this idea of distributing about how many terms are in here and how many are in here. It just starts to get a lot of work the more terms you get in. Yeah, so we'll end there. See you in the next one.